Boy, how many things are there that in our other life? Remember our other life like 2 weeks ago? Do you remember we had a life different than we have right now? In our
Yeah.
other life, how many things were there that we said, oh my gosh, I'd just die if I didn't have my morning coffee from my favorite coffee place? Or anything else that was like such an integral part of our life. Everything would fall apart if we didn't, we didn't base it on, I don't know what, the yoga class or the whatever else it is that we have in our lives. And we don't have them in our lives, and we didn't die. We focused on lots of different things. Nowadays, in this new life that we have, this Corona life, other things seem to be important. We have a whole different set of values, and maybe the values that we have right now are closer to the true values. The Torah portion talks about who you make, about making sacrifices, but the Haftarah talks about who you make your sacrifices to. What do you really value? And it's in the book of Isaiah. It's chapter 44. You don't need to turn to it. You can look it up later because it's really fascinating. It's really beautiful the way that it's written. I'll give you some of the highlights. God says that God is the Redeemer, the King of Israel. That's Adonai. It says, I am the first and I am the last, and besides me, there is no God. God is it. I mean, this is why we don't say that Jesus is God, because of this line right here. It's why we don't pray to any other religions, because of this. God is the first, God is the last, and besides me, that's what God says, besides me, Adonai, there is no God. And then it tells an interesting metaphor. It talks about the people that go and make these statues that others worship. And they make beautiful statues in the image of different gods. And they definitely talk about how beautiful they are. It says the carpenter measures out the line, and he does it with his pencil, and he planes it down. He takes the wood with a compass, and he fashions what he hews down. He cuts down cedars, and he cuts down ilex and oak trees, and he fashions it to be as beautiful as a human being, an idol. And they worship it. But then it goes into, but what happens with the rest of the wood? The rest of the wood that isn't used to make the idol from the same tree. That same tree, the person burns it for fuel and cooks their food and eats their meat and say, isn't it nice? Oh, isn't it wonderful that I feel warm from this tree? Isn't it wonderful that I'm able to eat and cook things because of this tree? And then God says, or Isaiah in the quote, sort of from God's perspective, says, look at the tree. You plant something and God waters it and it becomes a beautiful tree. You don't have to worry so much about it. You cut it down, you get warmth from it. You get to eat your food from it. And what are you doing? You are polluting the beautiful gifts that God gave you by turning that tree into an idol that whose eyes can't see and whose ears can't hear and whose hearts can't understand. And this is the amazing phrase. And it's not said exactly here, it's said in another part of the Bible. If you worship someone whose eyes are blind, whose ears can't hear, and whose heart doesn't understand, you become that. We become what we worship. That's wow. That's really wow. And these things that we worship, what are they? What are they? I mean, look, I'm going to tell you there's nothing wrong with Starbucks. They make a good product. They put it out there. They're nice to you. But it's not like go be kind to the stranger. They're not teachings that say this is how the world ought to be stewarded, to have stewardship for the world. This isn't the how to have faith when you're really lonely. Starbucks sort of falls a little short in that. Even though Starbucks is lovely, I have nothing against it. I do when people start to worship it. It's like the sun is a great thing. We love the sun. Hallelujah. The sun, the rain when it comes, isn't that what? They're wonderful, but don't worship them. They're not God. They're only things put on this earth that fit into God's plan. And it's for us to see when we worship God, we get eyes that really see the world. We get ears that really hear, and we get a heart that understands. That's why things like this prayer service are so important. That's why temple is so important. It's not just another thing. Look, there's nothing wrong with the food that we put out in the social hall. But, our coffee probably isn't as good as Starbucks. But the coffee is something at the Oneg, something to help people build community. We're here for much bigger things. We're not here to worship anything that's man-made. We're not here to worship any man or any woman. We're not here for that. We're here for God. And as we can see, people have made humongous mistakes, and it's really obvious. And we're seeing the ill effects of misplaced words, ignorance, poor direction, being a rotten role model for others, and how it don't put your sacrifices there. Put them with God and realize how everything fits in. That's why we have prayers in the morning, to help attune us so that our eyes could see. That's why we have these prayers and we have this community, that we're reaching to something higher than ourselves, because we're not perfect and the things that we make are not perfect. And who's to say that we take this wonderful wood that God gives us that can keep us warm and cook our food? Do we do that with other things, that we pollute other things that God gives us? Do we turn other things into sacrifices? I'm concerned. One of the largest charities in the United States is the Red Cross. Huge. $3.5 billion. Huge. Red Cross. Well, there's lots of people that don't even give. And then there's lots of other people that give to something called a charitable remainder trust, like a Fidelity Trust. And they put the money there and it just sort of multiplies, but it's not going out and being used. I hope that those doors are open, because this is an emergency when things are really needed. I hope that people will step up. Are we using our money properly? Are we finding good uses for our money? Are we tying into something that's human-made? Or are we hitching, to quote my grandmother, hitch your wagon to a star? Are we hitching it to something much greater than us? Something that's really a part of this world, something that's part of the life of this world, the reigns and the growth of this world and God's design. God is the first and the last, and besides Adonai, there is no God. And that's what we're here to kind of appreciate. So as we go out from here, take a look at the things that we worship, because we definitely worship some things. Are we worshiping the right things? Were we misled? Are there certain things that are fine and good, but maybe we gave them too high a status? And what things should we be aiming for? Not the graven images, but what is God's creation? What is God's plan, and how can we align ourselves to it? That's a task for the Shabbat. I just want to take a moment. I don't like to, on Shabbat, give updates about things, but I want to say this afternoon, just do something different. Do something different this Shabbat than you've done before. Some ideas, maybe if you have a bottle of wine that you're saving, open it up for this Shabbat. Why not? It's a special occasion. Make calls to some people that you haven't spoken to before. This is it's an opportunity to read something. Take something more spiritual on Shabbat. Take a look at Isaiah chapter 44. It's the end of 43 and the beginning of chapter 44. That's what Jews all over the world are reaching. See if you can find some other interesting insights from it. Let me know what they are. Anyways, the Zoom at 2 will continue, not today, but tomorrow. You can come on and we have it schmooze, just a chat, 2 o'clock, just a hello. You can call in. Also, it's I do the 5 at 5 minutes at 5 o'clock. It won't be tonight, it'll be tomorrow evening. Before we do our yard side list and our Kiddush, I just want to say, if you have any additional names that you want on the yard site, type them up now, either on Facebook or on the chat for the Zoom, and I'll read them. While we're doing that, I'm looking at our president, Michael Scott. Do you want to say a couple of words,